I always thought the biggest betrayal in life was being lied to by strangers. But nothing could prepare me for the moment I realized my entire childhood was built on lies. You see, I didn't meet my brother through family dinners or childhood games or even through a photo album. I met him because my parents needed money, my money. And the day I shook his hand for the first time was the day I realized just how far my family was willing to go for greed. I always thought I had a fairly ordinary upbringing. My parents weren't rich, but they weren't struggling either. My father was the type of man who measured worth by what you could provide, not by who you were. He worked long hours, often came home with a sharp, commanding tone, and even on good days, he had a way of making me feel like I was constantly on trial. My mother, on the other hand, was softer, gentler in appearance, but not in action. She rarely challenged my father and preferred silence over confrontation. I was an only child, or at least that's what I was told for as long as I could remember. No siblings, no big chaotic family dinners, no messy arguments over who got the bigger slice of cake. Just me. At times it was lonely, but I made peace with it. I convinced myself that maybe being an only child meant I got their full love and attention. But looking back, I realized their attention wasn't love. It was control. When I landed my first decent job in tech, everything seemed to change. Suddenly, my parents were interested in the details of my life in ways they never had been before. Growing up, I could get a B+ on the test, and they'd shrug. Now, when I told them my salary, their eyes lit up, not with pride, but with calculation. My father even said, "That's good. At least now you'll be able to take care of us when the time comes." It stung a little. I wanted him to say he was proud of me or that I worked hard and deserved it. Instead, it sounded like I was an investment finally paying off. Still, I tried to ignore it. I kept visiting them occasionally, kept answering their calls, even when the questions started getting repetitive. It was invasive, but I told myself they were just curious. Then, one evening changed everything. It was late, around 10 p.m., and I had stopped by their house after work to drop off some groceries. My dad had stepped out, and I found my mom sitting in the living room, sifting through some old photo albums and loose papers. I haven't seen those albums in years, and a wave of nostalgia hit me. I walked closer, curious. That's when it happened. I caught a glimpse of a photograph she quickly tried to hide under the pile. It was so fast, just a flicker of an image before it disappeared, but it was enough. It was a boy. Not a toddler, not a random family baby photo. A boy about 19 or 20, with dark hair, sharp eyes, and a jawline that looked hauntingly familiar. I froze. Something inside me twisted. "Who's that?" I asked. My mom's hands trembled. She looked at me like a deer caught in headlights. Before she could respond, my dad's voice thundered from the hallway. "Just a cousin. You don't know him." The finality in his tone was like a slammed door. My mom immediately nodded along, muttering, "Yes, just a cousin." But my gut screamed otherwise. I couldn't shake the resemblance. The nose, the eyes, even the faint smirk on his lips, it felt like looking at a distorted reflection of myself. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to grab the photo, hold it in my hands, demand the truth. But my dad's glare pinned me down, daring me to challenge him. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, I didn't. I just let it go. At least on the surface. That night, when I went back to my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the way my mom's fingers fumbled, the way my dad jumped in too quickly, too aggressively. It didn't feel like the reaction of someone explaining a harmless family picture. It felt like the reaction of someone covering up a secret. The days that followed only deepened my suspicion. My parents' calls became more frequent. They started dropping subtle hints, questions that didn't feel like idle curiosity anymore. My dad once asked, if you ever had to support someone financially, like someone close, would you be able to? The question was framed casually, but his eyes were sharp, watching me carefully. I laughed it off at the time, thinking it was one of his odd hypotheticals. But deep down, I felt uneasy. Why would he ask me that? Around the same time, I noticed little inconsistencies in the stories they told me. For instance, my mom once slipped and mentioned needing to check on the boys. I remember freezing at that word, boys, plural. I asked her what she meant, and she quickly corrected herself. I meant your dad. I call him boy sometimes. It was such a weak excuse, but I let it slide. And then there were the strange family gatherings. A few times I overheard relatives ask my parents about him. They'd lower their voices, whisper quickly, then glance at me like I wasn't supposed to hear. When I asked what they were talking about, they brushed it off as old family matters. Piece by piece, the puzzle started forming, even though I didn't want to believe it. The turning point came a few weeks later. My parents invited me over for dinner, a rare event, considering they usually expected me to come to them without question. The atmosphere was tense. My mom tried to act cheerful, piling food onto my plate, but my dad's expression was unusually serious. He kept circling back to questions about my savings, my job security, my future. Finally, he leaned forward and said, "There might come a time when your family needs you to step up. Family is everything, and we don't abandon our own." The words hung heavy in the air. Something about the way he said "our own" made my chest tighten. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't ignore it anymore. My parents were hiding something from me, something big. And whatever it was, it had to do with that boy in the photograph, the one who looked too much like me to be just a cousin. At the time, I didn't know the full truth, but I could feel it in my bones. My family wasn't what I thought it was, and soon I'd find out just how deep the lies went. The photograph of that boy wouldn't leave my mind. I kept telling myself that maybe my dad was right, that it was just some distant cousin, maybe one I had never met. Families are messy, right? People lose touch, photos get mixed in, and memories fade. But the way my parents reacted, panicked, defensive, almost aggressive, told me there was something more. I decided to test the waters. The next weekend, I stopped by their house again. This time, I casually asked my mom about family history while helping her chop vegetables in the kitchen. I said, "It's funny. I don't really know much about our cousins. Who all do we have? On Dad's side? On yours?" She froze mid-chop. Just for a second, but I noticed. She recovered quickly and said, "Oh, just the usual big family. Lots of cousins scattered around. We don't keep in touch with most of them." Her answer was too vague. My mom usually loved talking about family gossip, but this time she shut it down with a single sentence. Later, when my dad came home, I tried again. I brought up genealogy websites, how some people find long-lost relatives through DNA tests. His face darkened instantly. He put his fork down and said firmly, "Don't waste money on things like that. Some stones are better left unturned." That line, "some stones are better left unturned," lodged itself in my chest like a thorn. After that night, I knew for certain. My parents were hiding something, and they were terrified I'd discover it. The next clue came from a completely unexpected place. My aunt. One afternoon, I ran into her at the grocery store. She was always warmer to me than my parents were, so I thought maybe I could pry a little. I mentioned casually, "I saw some old photos at Mom's place the other day. There was this guy in one of them, looked about my age. Who was that?" Her reaction said everything. She froze, then gave me this tight smile. "Oh, you noticed him. That's complicated." Before I could ask what she meant, she leaned in closer, lowered her voice, and whispered, "Ask your parents." Then, almost immediately, she changed the subject, pulling away like she'd said too much. I stood there in the aisle holding a basket of milk and bread, my heart pounding. Complicated. That was the word she used. And in my family, complicated always meant one thing, something ugly swept under the rug. From that point on, it was like the universe itself was feeding me hints. I started noticing odd behavior from my parents. Phone calls they took in hushed tones, doors closed when they never used to be. Once, I walked in on my dad at his desk speaking into the phone, saying, "He doesn't know. He can't know yet." When he saw me, he hung up so fast the phone nearly slipped from his hand. "Who was that?" I asked. "Work," he snapped. But my dad had been retired for almost 2 years. Then came the moment that cracked everything open a little further. One Saturday morning, I was helping my mom clear out the garage. We were sorting boxes when she stepped away to grab something from inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked into one of the boxes she had pushed aside. Inside were old letters, envelopes yellowed with age. On the top, I saw handwriting that made my stomach flip. It was addressed to my mom, but signed by someone named Daniel. The letter began with, "I hope you and our boy are doing okay. I wish I could be there." Our boy? I barely had time to register the words before my mom's footsteps approached. I shoved the letter back in the box and pretended to be busy moving another one. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly grip the cardboard. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Who was Daniel? What boy was he talking about? And why was my mom hiding these letters in the garage instead of keeping them in the house? The paranoia grew stronger. I started digging, quietly at first. Old family photos, documents, anything I could find. Most of what I uncovered seemed ordinary, but every so often there were gaps. Missing years, holidays where there should have been pictures but weren't. Whole stretches of time my parents never spoke about. I even went through some old yearbooks at the local library just to see if anyone familiar popped up. And then one day, there he was. That same boy from the photograph. Except now he wasn't just a boy, he was in his late teens, standing in a school group photo, smiling faintly. Underneath the picture, the caption read, "Mark Williams." My stomach dropped. Williams was my mom's maiden name. This wasn't a cousin, this wasn't a family friend. This was someone directly tied to us, someone I was never meant to know about. When I confronted my mom again, I didn't mention the yearbook. I just said, "Why does that boy in the photo look so much like me?" Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then whispered, "It's not the time." That phrase, "not the time," ignited a fire in me. For years, I had been treated like a child, like someone who couldn't handle the truth. But I wasn't a child anymore. I was an adult, and whatever this secret was, I had a right to know. Still, I didn't push harder, because now my curiosity wasn't just about who he was, but about why they were hiding him. And soon enough, I'd get my answer. But not in the way I expected.
I didn't expect the truth to come crashing into my life on a rainy Thursday night. The storm outside was relentless, pounding the windows of my apartment as I sat at my desk, half working, half distracted by everything I'd been piecing together. That photograph, the letter from Daniel, the yearbook, the eerie silences from my parents. It all swirled in my mind like a puzzle missing just one piece. Then my phone rang. It was my mom. "Can you come over? It's important," she said, her voice shaky. I felt that familiar pit in my stomach. Something was about to happen. When I arrived, both my parents were sitting at the dining table, the air so tense it was suffocating. My dad's jaw was set like stone, and my mom's eyes were red like she'd been crying. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to sound calm even though my pulse was hammering in my ears. My dad cleared his throat, looked at my mom, then back at me. "There's something we need to tell you." I crossed my arms. Finally. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my mom whispered, You have a brother." The words hit me like a physical blow. My knees felt weak and I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. What?" My dad leaned forward, his tone flat. "A brother. His name is Mark. He's a few years younger than you. And yes, he's your full brother. The room spun. The photo, the letters, the yearbook, it all made sense now. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked. My mom buried her face in her hands, but my dad answered without hesitation. Because it wasn't relevant. We thought it was better for you not to know. Things were complicated back then. Not relevant, I repeated, my voice rising. You hid a whole human being from me. My brother? My mom finally looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. We were trying to protect you. Things with Daniel... She cut herself off quickly, but I caught the name. I froze. Daniel? Who's Daniel? Silence. And then it clicked. Daniel wasn't some random man writing to my mom. He was connected to all of this. Maybe he was involved with Mark. Maybe he was even my dad. But before I could piece it together, my dad interrupted sharply. Enough of this. The point is, Mark is in trouble. He needs help. I blinked, confused. What kind of trouble? Money trouble, that's what. He's fallen on hard times, my mom said softly, and we thought, maybe you could help. You're doing well now. You have the means. The anger that surged through me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice shaking. You've lied to me my entire life. You've hidden the fact that I have a brother. And now the only reason you're telling me is because you want me to pay his bills? Neither of them spoke. Their silence was louder than any answer they could have given. I laughed bitterly. Unbelievable! You didn't tell me because I deserve to know. You told me because you think I'm your ATM. My dad's eyes hardened. Family helps family. I snapped. You don't get to use that line with me. You decided I didn't have a family when you kept him a secret. Don't you dare guilt me into this now. For the first time in my life, I saw my father falter. His face twisted, not with anger, but with something almost like desperation. Please, he said, his voice low. Just meet him. One time. That's all we ask. My heart was pounding. Every instinct in me screamed not to trust them. But at the same time, curiosity clawed at me. After all the lies, all the manipulation, I needed to see for myself who this secret brother really was. I didn't agree that night. I stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me, rain soaking my clothes as I stumbled to my car. But their words haunted me. Mark is in trouble. He needs help. Was he really some helpless victim dragged into my parents' schemes? Or was he just like them, using me for money? I didn't know, but deep down, I knew I had to find out. The next week, I got a text from my mom with an address. No explanation, no details, just an address. Against my better judgment, I went. It was a small apartment complex across town, old and run down. I knocked on the door, my stomach in knots. After a moment, it opened, and there he was, the boy from the photo, the teenager from the yearbook, the brother I never knew existed. He looked at me with the same eyes I saw in the mirror every day, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, You're him. You're my brother. And in that instant, my entire world shattered.
For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. Standing there, face to face with Mark, was like looking into an alternate version of myself. He was younger, thinner, rougher around the edges, but the resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same crooked half-smile, same dimple on the left cheek. I finally found my voice. So it's true. Mark's lips trembled into a nervous smile. Yeah, it's true. He stepped aside. You want to come in? The apartment was small and dimly lit, smelling faintly of old pizza and laundry detergent. A single couch, a small TV, stacks of unopened mail on the counter. I sat stiffly while Mark fidgeted in the kitchen, pouring 2 glasses of water. When he handed me one, his hands were shaking. I didn't think I'd ever get to meet you. I stared at him, my chest tight. How long have you known about me? His eyes dropped. Since I was 13. I nearly choked on my water. 13? And you've never reached out? Mark's voice cracked. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But Mom and Dad... He stopped, glancing nervously at me. I mean, your mom and dad. I cut him off sharply. They're your parents too. Don't sugarcoat it. He nodded slowly. They told me not to. They said you were better off not knowing, that it would ruin things. Anger burned hot in my stomach. Of course they did. Always in control, always gatekeeping the truth. But, Mark continued, I'd watch you from afar, online, social media, graduation posts, job updates. I knew you were out there doing well, and I thought, maybe it was better this way. Better for who? I leaned forward. So why now? Why suddenly, after all these years, am I meeting you? He hesitated. His jaw tightened. Then he exhaled slowly. Because I'm drowning, and they think you can throw me a life raft. There it was. The truth, or at least part of it. I narrowed my eyes. So, this is about money. He winced, guilt flashing across his face. It's not... Well, yeah, partly. But it's not just that. I wanted to meet you. I needed to. The money thing, that was Mom and Dad's angle, not mine. His voice cracked with desperation, and for a moment I wanted to believe him, but the bitterness inside me was louder. I slammed my glass down. Do you have any idea how messed up this is? I spent my whole life wondering why my parents kept me at arm's length, why there were secrets they wouldn't share. And now suddenly I find out I have a brother because you need cash? You don't get to waltz into my life when it's convenient for you. Mark's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. I didn't ask for this either. I didn't ask to be hidden like some dirty little secret. Do you think it feels good knowing your parents were ashamed of you? That they pretended you didn't exist? His words cut deep, because for the first time, I saw it. The pain in his eyes wasn't faked. He wasn't just playing me. He was broken too, just in a different way. Why? I asked softly. Why would they hide you? He hesitated. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because I wasn't supposed to happen. Silence. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. They told me once, late at night, when they'd been drinking, I was the mistake. They wanted me gone, but Mom couldn't go through with it, so they kept me, quietly, out of sight, out of mind. You were their golden child, their do-over, their perfect son, and I was the reminder of everything they screwed up. My heart twisted. It was like being hit with 1,000 tiny blades. The perfect son. Me? I never felt perfect in their eyes. Yet here was my brother, carrying the weight of being unwanted. Mark wiped his face angrily. So yeah, I need help. I'm behind on rent. I lost my job. I've got nothing. But I didn't come to you because of that. I came because I couldn't stand being a ghost anymore. I wanted my brother to know I exist. The room was heavy with silence. My chest ached with a mess of emotions, anger, pity, betrayal, confusion. Finally, I whispered, I don't know if I can trust you. Mark nodded, swallowing hard. I get it, but please, just give me a chance. For a long time, I said nothing, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because if what Mark said was true,
if he really had been erased from my life because of my parents' shame, then the people I thought I knew weren't just liars, they were monsters. And if they lied about this, what else had they been hiding?
I couldn't sleep that night. Mark's words echoed in my head on repeat. The mistake, the ghost, the unwanted one. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my whole life flashing in fragments. The favoritism, the cold silences, the way my parents always measured me against some invisible ruler I could never see. Now I knew why. I wasn't competing with myself, I was competing with a shadow. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove straight to my parents' house. When they opened the door, their faces went pale. They knew. "You met him," my dad muttered, his jaw tightening. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. My voice shook with rage. "All these years, you let me grow up thinking something was wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough. And all along, you were hiding my own brother." My mom reached for me, tears welling up. "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. "Then what was it like?" I roared. The air grew heavy. My dad's face hardened. "He was a mistake. We weren't ready. And when he came along, everything fell apart. Our marriage, our money, our lives. We kept him away so you wouldn't have to carry that burden." I stared at them, disgusted. A burden? He's a human being. He's your son, my brother. Mom sobbed into her hands. Dad just shook his head like I was too naive to understand. And that's when I realized it wasn't shame that kept them hiding Mark. It was selfishness. They hadn't protected me. They'd protected themselves. I left without another word. Over the next few weeks, I met with Mark more and more. At first, it was awkward. Two strangers bound by blood but separated by years of lies. But slowly, we began to talk. Really talk. About our childhoods. About the different versions of family we grew up with. About all the times we'd wondered why nothing ever felt whole. And the more I listened, the more I realized something terrifying. I wasn't the only one who had been robbed of a family. We both had. My parents hadn't just lied to me, they'd stolen decades of brotherhood from both of us. One evening, sitting in his dim little apartment, Mark asked the question that had been hanging in the air for weeks. "So, do you hate me?" I looked at him, at the nervous fear in his eyes, and felt my anger shift, not toward him, but toward the people who put us here. "No," I said finally, "I don't hate you, but I'll never forgive them for making us strangers." Mark nodded, tears glistening. The last time I saw my parents, they begged me to reconsider. "We're still your family," my mom pleaded. "No," I told her, my voice steady. "You're blood. But family? Family doesn't bury secrets. Family doesn't treat their children like mistakes. Family doesn't erase a son because it's inconvenient." My dad opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "I have a brother now. That's my family. The rest of you, you made your choice years ago." and I walked away. Months later, Mark and I stood side by side at my art show. Or maybe it was his first job interview that I helped him prepare for. Or maybe it was just the two of us eating takeout on his beat-up couch, laughing about nothing. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. For the first time, I wasn't alone, and neither was he. The truth cost us everything we thought we had, but it gave us something better, something real. A brother. And that's when it hit me. My parents hadn't introduced us because they wanted money. They'd introduced us because they knew, deep down, that they were losing me. And they were right. Because I was done living in their lies. I had my brother now, and together we would write a story that was ours, not theirs.